Europe strikes back Russia hard with this secret weapon. An almost ban on importing Russian oil into Europe is gravely affecting the earnings of Russia. It might lead to a downfall of Russia to an extent that they have put their war with Ukraine on hold for now. So what will happen to oil prices? Will Europe have trouble finding other sources of oil and transport fuel? Let us see what facts we are able to mine by the end of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. There will definitely be a heavy increase in price as the import of petrol is banned from Russia. Europe will have to find another source very fast. The US administration believed that the European Union's restrictions on Russian seaborne oil, which came into force on Monday, would send the prices rising. However, their prediction was wrong, as all oil prices have not shot up but rather drastically reduced. A significant source of concern was a prohibition of the supply of ships and services such as insurance and finance for Russian commodities traveling anywhere in the globe. The US recommended a price restriction on Russian exports to lessen the damage. Cargoes acquired the price at below the threshold, subsequently established at $60 a barrel, which would be immune from shipping and services restrictions. But it seems like they need not to have worried, at least not yet. The last Russian barrels have been delivered to European ports. Moscow has now lost a market worth of more than 1.5 million barrels per day right on its doorstep. If Poland and Germany follow through on vows to restrict pipeline imports, it stands to lose another 500,000 barrels per day by the end of the year. Nonetheless, rather than rising, oil prices have fallen. On Friday, the fifth day of the import ban, Brent crude, which is the benchmark of selling oil, was trading below $77 a barrel. For a minute there, it even came below $76. This is a 14% drop, which is the highest ever since the penalties were imposed. This drop at a drastic rate is affecting the European economy. The continuous importance of Russian Baltic ports, even after the country has lost its European market, shows that the government does not have the capacity to deliver oil flows. The single pipeline to China and Russia's Pacific coast is already full, and the only route to reach Russia's final remaining markets in China, India, and Turkey is a long way and expensive journey across Europe and through the Suez Canal. Instead of causing a crude shortfall, the EU sanctions have generated a local surplus in certain markets. A massive amount of Russian oil is competing with flows from the conventional Middle Eastern sources, and sellers must offer massive discounts to compensate for the high expense of the lengthy travels necessary to transfer cargo from the Baltic. However, Europe does not seem to be worried about its crude oil sources. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia has led to inflation in food and energy departments. Over 90% of Russian imports are impacted. Today, the sea transports 2/3 of Russian oil consumed in Europe. The balance is sent through pipelines to landlocked nations, which will continue to be supplied in this manner. Negotiations between the member states on crude oil have been tough, especially because Hungary has opposed the ban. This for the political as well as economic reasons, since Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who supports Russia, is opposed to sanctions. Hungary is a landlocked country. It imports oil from Russia via pipelines, and unlike nations with access to the sea, it cannot simply diversify its supply. Hungary, which had threatened a veto, would be permitted to resume oil imports via the Druzhba pipeline. Slovakia and Czech Republic are in the same boat. Brussels has been given more time to restructure their energy networks. Germany and Poland, on their own, have chosen to suspend their supply over the same pipeline until the end of 2022. As a result, Russian imports will be reduced more than 90%. However, Moscow finds it simpler to find additional customers for its tanker shipments than it does for pipeline exports. Some member states, however, are concerned that the competition for oil purchases may be skewed. Stability or reorientation? Some analysts are concerned that the European Union's decision could destabilize the global oil market. Francis Perrine, the senior research fellow at the French Institute for International and Strategic Affairs, disagrees. Reorientation does not imply destabilization, he says. I don't believe we can speak about global oil market disruption. It is not an outright embargo, but it allows for a 90% reduction in import quantities compared to a before the conflict, which is a significant step. Clearly, there will be an effect. We cannot impose a harsh step like an embargo without affecting the oil market and prices, said the expert. That might change in the next several months. China is loosening its COVID limitations, which might spark gasoline demand that has been stifled by travel restrictions and a slump in economic activity. This will cause the market to tighten once again. The embargo extends to refined items. Europeans would soon have to find an alternative sources to Russian diesel, which they mainly imported before the war. Following discussions at a G7 meeting, the European Union has decided to restrict the price of Russian oil supplied to third nations at $60 per barrel. This cap has been strengthened by adding a clause to maintain its 5% below the market price of Russian crude oil, which is already trading at a steep discount and varies substantially. Ukraine has expressed its displeasure with the size of the cap, which was lowered downwards by European officials in comparison to the initial objective. Poland has supplied significant pressure in this direction, obstructing discussions until a last straight line. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky claimed that it was not a major choice and would be very pleasant for a terrorist state budget. According to Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak, the West's approach is a significant intervention that violates free trade principles. We are developing measures to ban the adoption of a price cap device, regardless of the amount established, because such intervention might further destabilize the market. We will only sell oil and petroleum products to nations who will cooperate with us under market circumstances, even if it means reducing output somewhat, Alexander Novak stated. The spotlight is now on the large purchasers. A much more severe EU embargo on Russian refined oil products like diesel is probably going to happen, which may destabilize oil markets, which are already running low on transportation fuel. So is the embargo effective? The European Union estimates that the embargo will halt 90% of Russian imports by the end of 2022. Many analysts, however, believe that Russia will be able to easily avoid the European ban. According to Phuc Vinh Nguyen, research fellow at the Jacques Delors Energy Center, the Russians can always find solutions, either by trying to mask the commodities, mixing them with other various types of oil to hide their origin, or with a fleet that would make various detours through Asia and then Europe. Unlike the gas market, the oil market makes the process easier. There is no way to ensure that the oil you purchase from dealers in Mumbai, Singapore, or Saudi Arabia is not from Russian resources, says Mathieu Azenu, who is head of the Shift Project, a French research organization pushing a post-carbon economy. We must pay attention to the true capacity and the desires of European players to cope without Russian energy, says Mathieu Azenu, who believes the European Union recognizes that it cannot entirely abandon Russian oil and gas. For the time being, the world has been able to manage the redirection of Russian oil from Europe to Asia, and the expense is being borne by the Kremlin, as it was desired to Western capitals. Do you think the EU did the right thing? Tell us in the comments below, and we'll see you next week. Ciao!